Moving on to the next session, Scott Russell from SAP is going to share with us how small and medium enterprises can leverage digital capabilities to accelerate their recovery from the pandemic. Now, Scott is the president for SAP Asia Pacific Japan and is responsible for driving the business strategy, revenue, and customer success across the region. With decades of experience spanning sales, management, consulting, business development, operations, and support, Scott brings in-depth understanding of the business landscape across Asia. Now, over to you, Scott.
Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Russell. I'm the president of SAP across Asia, Pacific, and Japan. And I'm super delighted to join you here at one of the biggest fintech shows globally, the Singapore FinTech Festival 2020. Let's start with a question. What is a game changer? Well, it's something or someone that can spark a great deal of change. Now, I believe that every single small, medium enterprise across Asia has the potential to become a game changer. Collectively, the SMEs in this region already are. SMEs are the engines of growth and innovation in this region. And amazingly, they account for over 97% of all business and employ half of the workforce across the region. Now, these organizations contribute not only to their communities, but they also drive economic growth. Their share of GDP ranges up to 50% in higher income countries, such as Singapore and Malaysia, and even close to 20% in lower income countries. However, even though SMEs play such a significant role in the economy and essentially form the lifeblood of many countries, they are underserved or unserved by financial institutions. In most countries across Asia, SME loan volumes are less than 60% of their contribution to GDP. Now, the reasons are varied. Could be inadequate distribution channels, lack of cash flow, higher costs of lending, where SMEs are perceived as being higher risk. No matter what the reason, these obstacles are prevalent in the most advanced economies, where SMEs do have easier access to loans, but the disconnect in some of the more emerging markets are more apparent in markets like ASEAN. What's made matters worse is COVID-19 has had a sudden and an unfortunately significant impact on individuals, businesses, industries, and countries across the world. And while there are very few businesses remaining untouched, it has severely affected the small, medium enterprises around the world, and particularly here in Asia. Due to that limited economic activity, lockdown in most countries across the region, SMEs have found it particularly hard to survive. These small businesses have had to cut back production. They've had to reduce their service delivery. They've had to find ways to stay alive. And unfortunately, for many, they've had temporary layoffs of employees and have had real difficulty in raising working capital. According to a survey by the OECD, the World Bank, and by Facebook, globally, 26% of SMEs have had to close down their operations between January and May this year. And in South Asia, that number has jumped to 46% of SMEs having to close their doors. These businesses are at great risk due to abrupt supply chain disruptions and tightened financial conditions. We used to think that the interconnectedness of the global supply chain was one of its great strengths, but the pandemic has truly shown that it's turned it into a great weakness when it comes to allowing SMEs to navigate these uncertain times. There is no doubt organisations such as ours, through initiatives and partnerships with both private institutions and with governments, need to power the growth of these game changers and allow them to scale and grow as we have done before. We need to lean on our scale, our infrastructure, and our innovation to guide them through the next phase as we enter out of COVID and into the new normal. So the real question is, how do we do this? Well, at SAP, we have been working closely with small and medium enterprises across the Asia Pacific and Japan region for for over 3 decades. Over 80% of the clients in this region are actually SMEs. We know their business. We understand their opportunities. We are also very aware of their challenges. And despite their vulnerabilities and challenges, SMEs do have certain advantages over their larger counterparts. There's no doubt that they can quickly adapt to market shifts. They can quickly innovate products or services at speed, and they're able to modify their business models with limited or no disruption. The real question is, are these capabilities enough to ensure not only their survival, but their success, especially in times of economic uncertainty like we face today? If we acknowledge their strengths and their advantages, well, why did nearly half of the SMEs in South Asia had to close their doors and their operations from January through to May? It comes down, in our view, to 3 elements that are instrumental in accelerating the rebuild for the SMEs out of this pandemic. Those 3 areas are: number 1, digitalization; number 2, financial inclusion; and number 3, public-private partnerships. Let's start with a deeper look at digitalization. Well, there's no doubt one of the positive outcomes from the pandemic is that a digital transformation has been put right to the top of the business agenda, no matter what the size of the organization. There's no ifs, buts, or maybe. Digital transformation is here, and it's here now. Organizations have to realize that they have to be online, they've got to be digital, they've got to be operating real time if they want to survive. And the great news is SMEs are already embracing digitalization. Earlier this year, SAP and Oxford Economics did a study of over 800 executives in 8 different countries across the Asia Pacific region. And SMEs in the region definitely understood the sense of urgency to digitally transform. They had to gain advantage that the digital changes allowed for them. And while many still have a long way to go on their transformation, almost 2 in every 3 SMEs have had made moderate or substantial digital changes and transforming their businesses this year. So while they're clearly embracing the technology, they definitely require support. Larger organizations have a responsibility to help SMEs in their journey by making technology, solutions, resources to be at their availability at a reasonable cost. The aim is to digitize and transform business models and supply chain to help their businesses accelerate into the future. By turning it digital, SMEs have an end-to-end visibility of the entire supply chain, from status of suppliers to the last mile delivery to their customers. The key points here is visibility and access to trusted, real-time information so you can make better decisions. In uncertain environments, and let's face it, we're going to be facing uncertainty for some time in the future. Digital access like this visibility definitely allows organizations to react, adjust, recover, to quickly prepare, and that includes digital financing as well. Put simply, visibility equals resiliency. In the near term, the motivation to digitally transform the supply chain is mostly about cost efficiency and effectiveness. But in the longer term, it's about building resilient businesses, which of course every SME wants to be. Let's take the example of Singapore-based Pasture Pharma, a pharmaceutical organization with a presence actually in over 100 countries. It's one of the just 2 companies worldwide that produces FDA-cleared pandemic masks. Now, Pasture Pharma wanted to replace their old financial software. It wasn't integrated. The data flows weren't orchestrated, their business flows weren't orchestrated with their point of sale system or with their dispensing delivery systems. A significant amount of manual intervention was unfortunately needed to circumvent these limitations, resulting in waste of time, employee stress, and actually poor service sometimes to their customers. By digitizing their business, Pasture Pharma streamlined their accounting and financial processes. They automated those processes, improving inventory management and reducing the amount of repeatable manual work into value-adding activities. This company is now able to handle millions of records of transactions, generated real time in key functions, and improve the speed of compliance and service to their customers through greater transparency in their documentation and data. In short, Pasture Farmer is way more resilient through this digital change. Now, COVID-19 is certainly not the first disruption that we faced, and it won't be the last. SMEs around the world and in this region need to become pandemic proof. They need to become resilient and deal with uncertainty in the future. Businesses have to accept that things will never go back to pre-COVID-19 days, and maybe we don't want to. Supply chain resiliency will become a critical factor for businesses to keep the lights on, but also to ensure that their obligations to their partners, to their customers, are able to be delivered no matter what the disruption that occurs. Now let's move to our second point, which is financial inclusion. SMEs serve their local markets, as I described before, and many aspire to do business on broader markets, geographically or maybe in different industries around the world. But their growth is often inhibited by trade barriers, maybe complicated processes, and simply the difficulty of reaching over to these markets. Improving financial inclusion for SMEs can definitely reduce poverty, support job creation, and undoubtedly help economic and community growth. However, the access to finance, particularly in developing countries, is still one of the major issues in the development of the SME sector, and I believe one of the significant hurdles to their ongoing growth. The International Finance Corporation estimates that 65 million firms, or 40% of former micro, small and medium-sized enterprises in developing countries, have an unmet financial need of nearly 5.2 trillion US dollars every year. This lack of funding definitely triggers a vicious cycle. As SMEs lack the finances they need, they're unable to invest in the digital tools that I described before, which means they are unable to remain as competitive as their counterparts who can get access to that financial platform. Now, to help this, SMEs must be pulled into global ecosystems, networks, and supply chains. Being in a connected network with a diversified supply chain allows a number of things. Firstly, they're able to source suppliers from multiple countries. They're not limited to what's in their purview, but they can be open across suppliers all around the world. They can enable open trade across the borders so they can sell their goods and services and engage with markets outside their borders. They have an easier and more reliable way to access working capital, which is critical to survival. And of course, it enables them to adjust or change course when significant impacts come to their business, which they weren't prepared for. By diversifying their supply base from global to regional and local supply chains means SMEs can create long-term sustainable businesses that can survive disruption. And finally, alliances between the public and private sector play an incredibly important role, not only in the recovery and readiness of SMEs, but actually to accelerate and fuel their growth. These partnerships create synergies that often can't be achieved by individual organisations or even industries to create sustainable, inclusive, and long-term resilient businesses. As an example, SAP has been working with the Singapore government, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and the Infocom Media Development Authority, along with other private partners, to build the SME-focused MetaHub Business Sans Borders. Now, BSB is an initiative to provide seamless innovation platform to accelerate SME digitization and broader financial inclusion. With an initiative like BSB, buyers can gain access to broader and possibly cheaper goods and services from across the world through easy integration on digital marketplaces. On the other side, suppliers can gain access to new markets and buyers beyond their current reach. This would in turn fuel SME economic opportunity in their nation. And it also offers a sandbox environment to accelerate the testing and delivery of new services and products and solutions for those SMEs. In our role as a trusted technology provider, We are helping Business Sans border operator Proxterra digitize SME trade globally by providing access to our cloud software. As the largest B2B network operator by commerce, SAP Ariba will join BSB as a consortium member to help SMEs discover trade opportunities globally, collaborate with buyers and sellers across multiple markets around the world, and of course, supporting the financially underserved sectors of SMEs and their communities. We envision BSB to not only be responsible as a business network, helping buyers make smarter, safer decisions before purchase, but it will also be an inclusive business network, enabling and onboarding SMEs, particularly social enterprises. Now, across the Asia Pacific and Japan region, 1.1 million buyers and sellers are already connected to the SAP Ariba network. In the past 12 months, companies have exchanged 10 million purchase orders worth over $113 billion. But we won't stop there. Our vision is to create a network of networks. By leveraging our network assets, the ecosystem, and our partnerships, we can connect industries from around the world and service provider networks, supplier intelligence, digital trust, and even payments worldwide. This way, we can connect our network with eBay or Alibaba or other networks to expose what they sell to our buyers and creating a multiplier effect of commerce, growth, and inclusion. Or we can connect to our trade partners, global banks and financial institutions, and allow them to finance invoices for our customers or for other values. Or we could connect our network of Indigenous and social enterprise businesses and exposing them to large corporate buyers. This is only possible by opening up our technology and creating these types of synergies with our powerful ecosystem. We need alliances and partnerships with industry and public sector, bringing all of our collective strengths to be able to stitch together a digital end-to-end collaborative supply chain. Through these initiatives and our partnerships, we are creating responsible, inclusive business networks. We're bringing the markets closer. We're bringing these markets closer to the SMEs. And we're creating opportunities for these smaller companies, these game changers, to succeed, economies to strengthen, and nations to prosper. Now, we don't know what 2021 will bring, but we do know that unless we support these SMEs, these game changers in all of the countries across the region, our people, our communities will continue to suffer. It is our collective responsibility to be able to help SMEs move forward and drive that digital change. We need to help them maintain the vision. We need to help them drive flexibility. And we definitely need them to move fast. We need to power the game changers. Thank you so much for your time today. Have a wonderful Singapore FinTech Festival. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for your thoughts on that topic. Very important to all of our SMEs in whatever ecosystem you're operating in. Just a few updates if you're joining us today for this year's Singapore FinTech Festival. It is a global and distributed event. We are live online 24 hours a day for 5 days with content from more than 40 FinTech hubs around the world. We certainly hope that you are enjoying the content so far. This is the Global Common Channel. We feature high-level thought leaders and global policymakers. You can watch the content on the Green Shoots channel as well, with new concepts and deep dive discussions, or browse our hyper-local content channels. Those are curated by partners in the FinTech hubs. Now, to help you navigate our 5-day round-the-clock content, we have 5 different summits going on as well, each addressing a different global challenge. The Economic Summit, as you might imagine, implies global recovery from the pandemic. The Infrastructure Summit on creating infrastructure for a digital economy and society. The Impact Summit looks at enhancing inclusion and sustainability. And we look at restoring investors' confidence on our Investor Summit. And finally, building skills for the future on the Talent Summit. This year's Singapore FinTech Festival is giving a rich, immersive experience for you as well, combining physical and online presence. You can go to our online city throughout the event, network with other participants and exhibitors. Of course, our digital premium passes provide access to workshops, demos, the networking zone, intimate mentorship sessions, and Deal Fridays. Now, those Deal Fridays are a special event for fintech startups and investors as well. If you're physically in one of the fintech hubs, you can join one of the many curated offline events subject to safe distancing measures for COVID-19. Meanwhile, our global content includes aggregating curated sessions from the Global Satellite Events Partners, or GSEP. And you can also check out the starting lineup, which includes the FinTech Awards and Global FinTech Hackcelerator. Now, we also want to hear from you. You can reach out on our Speakers Lounge on the chat on the Singapore FinTech Festival website. Let us know what you're thinking about the different topics we've had, the different speakers we've had. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have additional insight that you might want to give to them? And of course, if you're on Twitter, our hashtag is SGFinTechFest. Always happy to get your insight and hear about your thoughts as we go through these 5 days of amazing content, over 120 hours of content for you in the fintech space.